Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here in the Rochester Press Box. Happy to be with you. I'm Bill Pucko. Tariq Spence. How you doing, man?
Fantastic. My day started with terrible coffee, just like the Giants. The sound of the coach was like the sound of the coffee, and then you drank it, and it was terrible.
And yet, I've got to believe you're happy about that. We'll get to that later.
I am, exactly.
How you doing?
Oh, feeling great. How are you doing?
Pat Duffy, Cavaliers. What do you...
The Shaquille O'Neal Cavaliers jersey. I am a collector of odd Shaquille O'Neal basketball jerseys. I got the Suns one, I got a Celtics one, I got the Cavs one, and I've won my All-Star jersey from Phoenix a couple years ago.
Great year to be a Cavs fan. They're exciting.
Yeah, and out of nowhere, too. I mean, Rondo's going to screw it all up, but good for them up until everything happened with the injuries, huh?
College football. It was the SEC again. I think... what did I run? Is this 12 of the last 16 championships have been won by the SEC?
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts. Where's college football headed, Tariq?
Well, I know there's a lot of work for the Big Ten, the Big 12, and all the other conferences out there to catch up. But it makes it interesting, and I know we've talked many times before about the playoff. This would actually help those other conferences try to sort of dethrone the SEC that has basically dominated college football for the last few years or so. But I find it very interesting the fact that I'm so happy Georgia won. And the reason why I'm happy Georgia won is because it, of course, been 40 plus years since they won. There was, I believe, an SI article that came out as to why Kirby Smart can't beat Nick Saban, and then of course goes out and beats Nick Saban. But it's just interesting to me how this all sort of turns out. They lose their wide receiver, does Alabama. They can't adjust. The defense from Georgia does a great job in the first half. Nobody scores a touchdown. They keep it close and then strike in the second half. It was great revenge for Georgia, great college football.
Two schools of thought on expanding the playoffs. One is that there aren't enough teams to fill the dance card, and it's just more blowouts. Or the second, which is the one I kind of subscribe to, is this is going to, I think to Tariq's point, sort of spread the talent out a little bit more to teams that have got a chance to do something, and maybe 3-4 years down the road, there's a little more competition for the SEC.
Okay, but you spread it out. I mean, look, I think you're being naive and still thinking that old school college football way that kids are going to college to win a national championship, and if we give more tickets to the dance, that kids are going to be willing to go to other schools. Kids don't care about winning national championships.
Yeah, but isn't that why Georgia and Alabama are playing every year, and Clemson? Those three schools are dominant?
No, I think that Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama are playing every year because if you look in the NFL, when the schools that send the most kids to the National Football League, it's Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama that have these connections, right? That's why these schools stay good for so long. And you're seeing, I mean, Clemson kind of popped out of nowhere. They had an off season. When's the last time you saw a dominant SEC or Big Ten school have a season as off as Clemson had? Look, it's going to adjust itself with the NIL deals here, right? Kids are going to be able to get paid, and other schools are going to be able to step up and put kids into the NFL. I think, to your initial point, you don't have enough teams with a 14 playoff to prevent blowouts the whole way through. What's going to happen when you put 12 in?
I think there's a fake love for Cinderella. We do this with the NCAA tournament for basketball. We love the Cinderella team.
I like
the team out of nowhere. And the reason why it's fake love is because it doesn't show up in the ratings. I think you go to the earlier rounds of those games between Michigan and Cincinnati, the ratings were not great. Then you get to the national championship game, ratings tell a hell of a lot better because this was the matchup you were looking for. But I think we'd like to love a team that will upset a big team. We want to see that one team, 1 year, grab that one shirt and say, I've been a Cincinnati fan forever. I've been a Notre Dame fan forever. Whatever that school will be is what everybody wants to gravitate towards, but it comes down to the elite.
I have to say this because we were talking about Hallmark movies. What, fake love for Cinderella?
I think it's real. I think it's.
I love the title.
Let's predict this right now. There will be a team in college basketball everybody will love going to the Sweet 16, and then they will follow them, and they'll be and we love it. We do it every year.
Sure.
And then of course they get smacked in the face somewhere along the line.
Okay, but we're also talking about two very different sports and two very different tournaments, right? I mean, when you have 68 teams now, there's going to be some upsets. You put into it's impossible with a sport like football.
And yet the SEC is agreeing to this. They think that they're willing to go along with expansion, which would hurt them.
No, see, but that's just it. If the SEC is willing to go along with expansion, they don't think it's going to hurt them because they're aware, put 50 teams in there. There's still going to be 2 or 3 SEC teams in the top 5 when all is said and done.
Well, the SEC, 12 out of 16, and what, 5 of those are Alabama, and the Vegas odds of the top 2 are Alabama and Georgia again next year. Clemson number 3.
Be careful what you ask for. I think they're underestimating the value of building up those teams and maybe changing.
Yeah, and the ratings were down.
Yeah, well, I mean, but people still
not
watch
over
it.
last year, to clarify, not over last year, but they were the second lowest because last year's was the lowest.
Let's not overlook the fact now that you can now bet some of these games, and it would be a lot more interesting if you did do a playoff.
It's the only reason I watched the national championship game is because I had money on Alabama money line. Thanks a lot. Finally, I cheer for you, and look what happens.
I had it picked. I had it picked when Georgia lost to Alabama in the SEC final. Remember I said the setup is perfect. The setup was absolutely perfect, and the numbers back it up now because there have been 5 rematches in the national championship game from games that have been played previous in the season, and all 5 were won by the team that lost the first game.
We love revenge games, don't we?
Thanks for that information before I put money down.
Well, the Rochester Press Box, we're talking NFL next.
And we're almost off the air.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here in the Rochester Press Box. Our Buffalo Bills segment brought to you by Ralph Honda. For 3 generations is celebrating 50 years as New York's first and oldest Honda dealer. Visit Ralph Honda today and find out how we do Honda right at ralphhonda.com. Well, you know, we got kind of messed up by the timing. This is airing after the Bills have played, and we don't know the outcome. But a little, sort of piling on our Josh Allen discussion from last week. He was second in the MVP last year, and he's not going to finish in the top 3 this year. But how do you evaluate what he did this season?
Look, I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you want to go based on numbers and wins and things like that, okay, fine. Aaron Rodgers is going to win the MVP. But if you want to talk about what the MVP is supposed to be, the legitimate value to your team, the most valuable player, how do you make an argument against Josh Allen? Look at that Bills roster and what they've been able to do. Look at last year. I mean, the running game was better last year. The defense has been playing phenomenally this year for the Bills, but that Bills offense does not score without Josh Allen this year. There have been 4 different games this season where Josh Allen took that team, put him on his back. Now, they weren't all wins. Tampa Bay would be one of them, but without Josh Allen and Tampa Bay, that game was a runaway blowout. The second regular season game against New England, Josh Allen wills the Bills to a win, even when his arm isn't working. That game against Carolina, rushes for almost 100 yards and 2 touchdowns because he can't throw the ball. Yet without him being able to do that, the Bills may get upset at home by Carolina. If you talk about the strict most valuable player to his team, you take away any of the other MVPs on those teams, they still might be playoff teams. Are the Bills?
I have to look at Aaron Rodgers as the valuable player, not only on his team, but in the league as well, especially where the Green Bay Packers started, where they're finishing at, his controversies in between, all the different things that go in.
To your point in your unfinished business last week where you said, you can't factor in that he's a jerk.
No. I don't even think that matters. I think that's actually settled into his personality, and he's sort of accepting it. But the other thing, too, is that, and I feel bad for Josh Allen, this is a popularity contest, like the Pro Bowl, like everything else that goes on out there. And give me the signature game where you were like, Allen was the man. Rodgers had about 3 or 4 of those games. Allen did it through his feet, did it through his arms, but did not have the signature. If he had beaten Tampa Bay, I will say this, Ed, if he had beaten Tampa Bay in Tampa, that is your signature win and your MVP case.
How about you throw a flag on the goal line? How about that? Because that's when they beat Tampa Bay. But that's a whole other discussion, right?
Games on Sunday. We got 3 of them. Which one are you looking forward to the most?
I can't wait to watch Steelers-Chiefs. I'm very excited about Steelers-Chiefs. The Chiefs are a 12.5-point favorite. And I said, and I know you got the tape, a month ago, that the Steelers were going to be the strange tough out in the playoffs. I think that the way the Steelers team is designed, with the defense that they have, the way they can run the ball, Roethlisberger's a shell of himself, whatever. I think that the Steelers game is a lot harder for Kansas City than people give that credit for. And if I want to sound insane and look like an idiot next week, I would not be surprised if the Steelers are playing next week over Kansas City.
Now, here's the thing. Normally, I think he's off his rocker. I will not even
Normally.
bet this. Normally, I will not even bet this game. You want to know why? Because I respect Mike Tomlin that much. I'm afraid of what the Steeler team is in. Listen, when they got sent to the playoffs, everybody was afraid of the Steelers. I don't care if you are Kansas City, high potent offense, and you're at home. You are worried about what that defense and J.J. Watt is going to be able to do. I would stay far away from this game. Listen, I'm not a bettor as of right now, but I wouldn't touch that game with a 10-foot pole.
And if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong here, this is the first time that Patrick Mahomes is playing in the playoffs without a bye week, right? Mm-hmm. Think about that.
Oh, yeah, because there had been 2 before.
Yeah.
All right. 12.5 points. It's the late game, the last of the 3. And 2 words for it, right? House money. For Pittsburgh. House money.
House money, baby.
Our Buffalo Bills NFL segment brought to you by Ralph Honda. Like It or Not is next.
Here's the Press Box Trivia question brought to you by Market View Liquor. where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390.
From travel to radio days to bloopers. Oh, and I have a special guest. You know Steve Hausman. He joins me on my next podcast at thegetawayguy.com.
Here's the Press Box Trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390.
Are you facing criminal charges from a DWI and feel that you never imagined it could happen to you? Contact attorneys with years of experience as prosecutors and defenders. Contact Ganguly Brothers Law today for a free consultation. You can put your trust in us.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box, our Like It or Not segment, brought to you by Ganguly Brothers Law, attorneys with experience defending the accused. Don't go unprepared. Contact Ganguly Law today. Like it or not, Tariq, we'll go to you first here for your favorite all-time coach of the Giants, Joe Judge, who's now out of a job.
Well, listen, I call this. I got a lot of flack for it early on from Giants fans. Give him a chance, give him a chance. And at the press conference, I did give him a chance. I loved him. I thought he was great. He came in, great energy, looking forward, coming from the Belichick system with the Patriots. I get all that. And then he actually coached. And it became controversy after controversy, headset controversy. I didn't do this, saying these different things about players, ex-coaches. And the last press conference that he had in the last game of the season was just embarrassing, and the kneeling down and running the quarterback sneak. I think this was all built up. I think he had the same win-loss average, or I should say record, as Pat Shurmur. No results, no change. You're bringing in a new GM, which I have to ask Duffy about after the air. They're bringing in a new GM. Let him pick his head coach. Hopefully it's Brian Flores. And then they can go from there. I think this is a great set to reset everything. You don't have a quarterback. You barely have a running back. Your defense is okay. You can build off of it.
They pride themselves on stability. And just a week ago, they said they were going to bring him back.
Well, it was a hell of a week. I say that much. But the other end of that, too, is that you go get a coach that can coach either offense or defense. He was special teams, and our defense and offense were terrible. So I just want some concentration. I want a good defensive team or a good offensive team, either one. But I'm glad that they're making the transition with a new GM.
Like it or not, conspiracy theory involving the near tie on Sunday night between the Raiders and the Chargers.
I'll go even before the conspiracy theory, and I'm sincere when I say this. Both of the coaching staffs for the Raiders and the Chargers should be fired. Oh. It is your job as an NFL head coach to not win games, but to make the playoffs. Is that a fair assessment? Sure. You have a job to make the playoffs. If you tie, you accomplish your goal. The only logical step, the second that the tie to make the playoffs was on the table, was for both coaches to go to midfield, shake each other's hands, and say, we're going to take a knee for the entirety of this game. And here's the thing, right? Even the football gods play it out to where that's going to go. And I will give a little bit of credit to the Raiders coaching staff. They essentially admitted in the post-game press conference that they were going to run that clock out and send both teams to the playoffs. Brandon Staley, the head coach of the Chargers, if I am the owner of that team, that timeout in the fourth, or in overtime, you should be fired for that. You should be fired for that. They're going home. You have an amazing offense with literal superstars, legitimate NFL superstars, all over it. And you're not playing in the playoffs because you didn't want to take a tie. Go home.
Let's just let that sit, because I don't want to shortchange Keith Hernandez. Like it or not, Keith Hernandez gets his number retired by the New York Mets.
Love it. It's interesting, of the '86 Mets team in which they won the championship, he was the leader. You know, all the specials, all the books, you talk a bit about how much of a leader he was. We know Strawberry and Gooden. I loved them as a kid. We're not so much the leaders on that team. Gary Carter, unfortunately, passed away. Was also one of the leaders on that team, and they were a wild bunch. So for Keith Hernandez to put that team all together, but you know, it's interesting. He's become just as important as a broadcaster as well, which I think is interesting in the fact that he would be the first one to do it. Broadcast-wise, media-wise, there'll be a lot of coverage for it. But I love Hernandez. Close to 300 hitter. I think 2,000 hits. You know, just a great type type of all-around player. So I think he's great in symbolizing that retired number.
And yet it struck me that 86 team was so great that you had to struggle to find a guy to hang this on.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, since that 86 team, there has been a lot of fallout. Wally Backman, I mentioned Carter earlier. Strawberry, I'm not sure what the relationship is with Strawberry and the Mets. Gooden, we know, has had a lot of tough times. So there's a lot of stars on that team, but it's interesting that Hernandez has been able, since that championship, to keep it all together.
Like It or Not, brought to you by Ganguly Brothers Law. Unfinished Business is next.
The Press Box Stat of the Week is being brought to you by McArdle's Restaurant in Fairport. McArdle's is open 7 days a week with dining available indoors and out, takeout and delivery. Come home to McArdle's.
Came now to Eichel. He floated one. Score!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rochester Press Box. It's time for Unfinished Business. Pat, start us off.
What is your legacy going to be? As we tape this, Syracuse men's basketball is 8-8 overall, 2-3 in the ACC. And it's hard to watch if you've been a Syracuse basketball fan because Jim Boeheim the last couple of seasons has been struggling, and he hasn't been taking it well. And there's been controversy before that, not only on the court, but off the court multiple times. Now, here's the thing. That guy is a god in Central New York. People here in Rochester revere him, too. And if you say a bad word about Jim Boeheim, you get all kinds of blowback from all kinds of people. And he deserves credit. Jim Boeheim built that Syracuse basketball program into a monster. Some of the best basketball games you will ever see in your life in the old Big East with Georgetown and Villanova, and they were appointment watching. But over the last 5-6 years, what are we watching here? And when you build your legend to a point where you can't get a guy to walk away, and it's up to him to go, and the ego might be preventing it, I'll ask again, what's your legacy gonna be? Is Jim Boeheim remembered as a guy who built that Syracuse basketball program to the monster that it became? Or is he going to be remembered as a guy who left relegating Syracuse basketball to the middle towards the bottom of the ACC? Because the longer he hangs around, the more likely the second one is.
A kicker for the Las Vegas Raiders was able to put through in the uprights in overtime, 47-yard field goal. His name was Daniel Carlson, and for his thanks, the Pittsburgh Steelers fans have decided to now go to his charities to donate money. I find this to be one of the great things about sports. Remember a few years ago, Bills fans did the same thing for Andy Dalton of Cincinnati, where he came up with a great touchdown at the end of the game, put the Bills in the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. This tradition of now finding sort of the last stitch effort of a player or players being responsible for another team getting into the playoffs, and then the fans thanking that team or that player by donating to their charity has been amazing. It's one of the little things that I love about sports that nobody seems to want to talk about, yet benefits so many different people who are in need. The NFL should capitalize on this and understand how important it is to thank the fans that are willing from another team to thank another player on another team for doing their job of winning a game so that they can go to the playoffs. It's a great tradition the NFL should continue.
When I was at Ithaca College, I remember thinking that it was a waste of time for women to be studying broadcasting, especially sportscasting. Back then, there was Phyllis George and Jane Kennedy, but both of them came to sports through beauty pageants and didn't offer much credibility as a result. It wasn't as though women couldn't actually become sportscasters. It's just that you didn't see them, so you didn't give it a thought. Now you can. The likes of Pam Oliver and Erin Andrews helped change the face of sportscasting, coming up through the ranks and achieving greatness in that field. Leah Hextall is now calling hockey games for ESPN. Beth Mowins is doing NBA games. And last year, Emma Tiedemann began calling professional baseball games full-time for the Portland Sea Dogs. Last week, the New York Yankees hired Rachel Balkovec to manage their single-A baseball team in Tampa. The 34-year-old had previously held positions as hitting and strength and conditioning coach. She was a Division I college catcher in softball and has a master's degree in kinesiology. She learned to speak Spanish. This is not a Tim Tebow-like publicity stunt. Balkovec is qualified. These can be difficult days to be optimistic about much of anything. Proponents of ignorance and exclusion have been energized and dominate the news cycle. But in the margins, progress is still winning little victories. Balkovec is one of those. It wasn't as though women couldn't actually become professional baseball managers. It's just that you didn't see them, so you didn't give it a thought. Now you can. And God strike me down for praising anything that the New York Yankees do. That's Unfinished Business, and that is our show. Gentlemen, thank you very much, Tariq.
A little bit worried about Monday Night Football's game. I don't know. Arizona's lost 4 of the last 5. LA has won 4 of the last 5. I don't know. Looking
Just hoping that the Bills won their game Saturday night.
They did. What are we even worried about?
The look says everything. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week with the Rochester Press Box.